The primary contactor isolates the 440-volt main supply from the transformer. This is unlocked and switched to a ready position. Then he does the same with a similar switch on the firing contactor. A warning light shows that the firing system is now in short circuit. A special key is used to close the primary contactor. The same key operates the firing switch. More shot holes, no misfires, and better fragmentation of the spoil makes the job of mucking out easier. After the round has been fired, the scaffold can come down. The wall pins for the slings are put in 15 feet lower. "70 feet below the top pins, 8 more slings, like this one, are inserted in the concrete wall. These will be attached to the bottom section of steel shuttering for concreting. Then the scaffold goes down for the grab to level off the spoil on the shaft floor. The loose bed of material is left to soak up the water intake and provide reasonably dry conditions for concreting. Now the scaffold goes down again until the steel shuttering lies between its lower decks. The scaffold slings are hooked on again, and the tension on the main hoist ropes is relieved. The last phase of the cycle now begins. We drop the steel shuttering to its new position in 3 sections. First, the curb piece. Before this can be unbolted from the main shuttering, its weight is taken by the 6 winch ropes which are lowered from the center deck. Here in the model you can see how the ropes pass over blocks beneath the top deck and down to the hand winches on the center. The slack is taken up all round and the curb piece is now unbolted. When all the flange bolts have been removed from the curb piece, a 15-inch key plate is wedged and hammered out. The curb now springs away from the wall. The charge hand orders the winchman to lower away. From now on, it's one continuous operation. After the curb, we lower the main section and matching piece. The scaffold remains in one position for walling. During sinking, the shuttering sections are never taken out of the shaft. They don't have to be broken down into separate units, and but for the key piece, are handled in complete rings. Finally, the concrete is delivered by pipeline in one continuous flow, instead of wind by wind in a hopper. By such methods, a 15-foot section of concrete lining can be completed in as little as 8 hours. At shaft bottom, the curb is attached to its wall slings, and later the winch ropes are removed. The key plate is lowered and bolted back into place. The completed curb forms the base for the next section of concrete lining, and must therefore be aligned very accurately. The level is measured against 4 steel tapes let into the wall higher up. Fine adjustments are made by means of turnbuckles on the curb slings. Compensation is allowed for the stretching of the slings under the total weight of concrete and shuttering. Scribing boards are then fitted between the underside of the curb and a soffit ring. Gaps between the boards are plugged with paper bagging. Whilst this was going on below, the service pipes have been extended a further 15 feet. Also, a concrete hose is fitted, leading into the distribution box. The space between the curb and the wall is then filled with concrete. On the surface, in line between the two shafts, is the automatic batching plant of 3 concrete mixers. These work together to provide a flow of 40 cubic yards per hour of concrete to either shaft. "40,000 tons of mixed aggregate and cement will go into the completed shafts. Weighing and measuring each mix is done in a matter of minutes. A turn of the wheel and the mixed concrete is poured onto one of 2 conveyor belts which run in line with the batching plant to either shaft. Here it's feeding number 1 shaft. A constant supply flows into the 6-inch feed pipe and down the shaft wall into the distribution box on the center deck. The flow is directed into each pipe in turn, so distributing the concrete evenly round the shaft wall. Pouring continues behind the curb piece for about half an hour. Meanwhile, from the scaffold, the center section of shuttering is unbolted and attached to the winch slings. The curb is filled to about 9 inches of the top, and the hose is removed and flushed out. The concrete must be allowed to harden for about an hour before the next pouring. Meanwhile, the center section is lowered into place and bolted to the curb. Then concrete is poured as before. The matching piece follows in the same way. At the end of the walling shift, we've completed another 15-foot advance. Since mucking has to be done first to remove the spoil left in the shaft from the last pull, we avoid firing soon after walling. A new cycle starts at once. Using the techniques we've seen, Parkside has doubled and even trebled the previous average sinking rates in this country. These records have been achieved through the combined skills of South African and British sinking engineers. But more than this, the lessons learnt at Parkside have set up new standards for rapid sinking in this country, and these have already set the pace for future developments in our reconstruction program.